The federal election is now less than 2 weeks away. Many people are still talking about the recent federal leaders debate. Some say the NDP's Jagmeet Singh was the winner, while many others felt it was Andrew Scheer who came out on top with some solid arguments. To give us his thoughts is our political contributor, Brian Lilley. Brian, what were your thoughts, though, of the debate?
Well, I would have to say that Jagmeet Singh got in some great lines, especially aimed at the progressive voters that he's trying to peel away from Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. But Andrew Scheer landed the hardest blows. You know, people like to always compare debates to a boxing match. Was there a knockout punch? Well, no knockout punches, but when you look at the totality of the debate, when you look at the clips that were played on TV and on radio the day after, what did people keep playing? They played the one clip off the top where Andrew Scheer opened up the debate by going after Justin Trudeau, calling him a fraud and a phony. I equated it to, everyone was doing their warm up skate, and Andrew Scheer dropped the gloves and walked over and punched Justin Trudeau in the head. That's the type of Donnybrook that it was. And then at the end, after Trudeau blocking another couple of attempts, and I'll tell you how they block in a minute, I couldn't believe that Trudeau let Andrew Scheer say to him, "You seem obsessed with provincial politics. Why don't you run to be leader of the Ontario Liberal Party?" So Jagmeet Singh had the funny lines. He had the lines that, basically saying, if you like Justin Trudeau's pretty words, but realize he hasn't done anything, come over to me. But, Andrew Scheer got in there and got two hard knocks on Justin Trudeau.
It's funny, too, when Justin Trudeau referred to Singh as Scheer. I think even one of the moderators did that as well, which is
Yeah,
quite
yeah,
interesting.
it happened twice and it was pretty funny. Yeah.
Yeah, now that we're well into the campaign, should Andrew Scheer be concerned about PPC leader Maxime Bernier being a threat and maybe taking away some of those conservative votes?
I don't think that Maxime Bernier did himself a ton of favors in the debate the other day because, look, he shouldn't have been debating the other leaders. He should have been just talking about his policies, and he only did that about half the time. Uh, Most people don't know what Maxime Bernier stands for. They maybe have seen some tweets, they've seen negative stories about him. So he had a chance to just stare in the camera and say, "I'm Maxime Bernier. I represent the People's Party. Here's what I stand for." And he did that part of the time, but not as often as he should have. I mean, there have been offers for him to do the interviews with major networks that he's turned down that I don't understand. CBC offered him a full hour. I don't particularly like CBC, but if I'm a national leader trying to get votes, I'm going on there for an hour when I can just speak to undecided voters. That was a bad mistake, and so was him not focusing just on the voters and being drawn into the debate. He should have ignored the other leaders, talked directly to voters.
Now, where you live in Toronto, it's a Liberal stronghold. We all know that. But with all of the
Yes.
recent controversy dogging Justin Trudeau, are candidates trying to distance themselves from the Liberal leader, kind of like what happened in the last Ontario election with Kathleen Wynne?
A little bit. I mean, it always used to be Team Trudeau, Team Trudeau, Team Trudeau. You're seeing less of that now. Some people just having their name and Liberal on the sign. It's not as bad as some elections I've seen of various parties. People drop the party name and they just have the color. That tells you that the party's not doing well, and they're hoping that their name recognition will help. So it's a little bit of that's going on, but Justin Trudeau still able to get candidates showing up. He had 2 days after blackface, almost all of his Toronto area candidates were standing behind him, except for Navdeep Bains, who hasn't been heard from an awful lot.
Conservative leader Andrew Scheer has a real concern for national unity in our country, including the talk of separation here in Alberta. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so we sat down for an editorial board meeting with Andrew Scheer at the Toronto Sun the other day, and there's a whole bunch of us, columnists and such, sitting around asking him questions for about an hour. And the questions of national unity, it always used to just be Quebec. Well, now it's both Quebec and Western alienation because they're both on the rise. I don't know if people have realized out in Western Canada that the Bloc could end up with the third most seats after this election. They're back on the march again. They're going up in the polls. They could go up even further after the French language debate. So you've got Quebec separation, or at least a separatist party on the rise there. Meanwhile, you've got Western alienation, which I don't have to explain to you, Hal, but The polls from organizations like the Angus Reid Institute show that the strong majority in all four Western provinces believe that their province isn't treated well by Ottawa. 50% in Alberta saying they can see the province seceding from Canada. Uh, Talk to people like Brad Wall. He'll tell you he's never seen it so high. And the answer from Justin Trudeau to all this, when people raise concerns, is why are you playing with national unity questions? He would never say that to someone raising the same things in Quebec, but he does with Western alienation and Western separation. So we asked Andrew Scheer about it, and he said, look, you just got to back off, let the provinces do what they do, and stop trying to shut down an important industry like the oil and gas industry. He said, we'd never shut down the fishery in Atlantic Canada or the forest industry in BC or manufacturing in Quebec or the auto sector in Ontario. Why is the government targeting this? He says most Canadians want Canadian oil to be used because we do it responsibly. Get out of the way and stop interfering with the provinces, be it on oil, with things like Bill C-69, or any other issue, like the carbon tax.
More polls are out, Brian, and it appears as though the Liberals and Tories are running neck and neck. But when it comes to Justin Trudeau, the polls say only 25% of Canadians believe he should receive a second term as Prime Minister.
Yeah, this is a question that was put out for me by John Wright of DART and the Maru Blue Voice Canada poll. And I've been working with John for a very long time, very smart pollster. And he always says, okay, you can look at the polling numbers, but you also have to look at, in people will say, I'll vote for this party. And maybe it's reflexive because they've always voted that way or their families always voted that way. But what about if you ask, is the country on the right track or the wrong track? Has the government done a good job and deserve to be reelected, or is it time for a change? And so that's the question he asked this time. And 55% said it's time for a change. Only 25% said the government's done a good job and deserves to be reelected. And 19% said they're unsure. That 19%, those are the voters everyone's after right now. But what was fascinating was this sentiment was solid across the entire country. There wasn't a province that was below 50% on saying it's time for a change. There wasn't a province that was above 29% in saying that Trudeau's done a good job and deserves to be reelected. So he's trailing his own party on the deserves to be reelected front. That spells trouble for the Liberals, as we've talked about before on other polls that show a lack of enthusiasm among Liberal voters.
Now, there were some healthcare cuts in the military last August, Brian, and we're starting to feel the ripple effects in the provinces.
Yeah, and you think of the places where there are large military establishments. In Ontario, I'm thinking CFB Petawawa. I'm thinking the city of Ottawa itself because they've got National Defence Headquarters, St. Jean-sur-Richelieu, south of Montreal, Edmonton and Cold Lake. Those are two big military places, or Shiloh in Manitoba. Well, military members that are full-time aren't eligible for the provincial health plan. So if you're a full-time military member, it's the forces, Department of National Defense pays for your health care. Even if you go to your local hospital or your local doctor, they are reimbursed by the federal government. Unilaterally in August, they just decided that they're going to change what the fee structure is. So, it broke out this week that spokesperson for Alberta Health Minister Tyler Shandro, Christine Elliott in Ontario, and the Quebec government, they've all written and said, hey, wait a minute, you can't do this. Quebec said in the initial story that it broke, oh, we can't comment, we're in the middle of discussions. The other provinces are still pushing to get real discussions and real negotiations going. So is this again, back to the national unity issue? Is this Quebec getting special treatment? Some hospitals are looking at multi-million-dollar deficits. I think it's about 2 to 3 million in Petawawa, where they've got a major military base. Same in Kingston, across Ontario. I don't have numbers for Alberta, sorry, but across Ontario, hospitals are looking at $10 million in unfunded treatments because of this change. And, Justin Trudeau's going around saying Jason Kenney and Doug Ford are cutting healthcare. No, it's actually him.
So, Brian, we had the French leaders debate, back to English, and on Thursday we have another French debate, so 2 French, 1 English. Will Bill 21, Quebec's secularism law, become a big issue?
Oh, it's going to become a major issue because it was in the English debate, which is a bit surprising, but because it really only affects Quebec and most of the Quebec debates are French. I mean, we call them the French language debates. Let's be honest. They almost entirely focus on Quebec issues. But when it came up, the Bloc said, oh, we support this bill, and it's very popular, by the way, in the rest of Canada. And it may be, but it also goes against what all the federal party leaders have said they stand for, that they stand for diversity, that they, will defend religious liberty. And here they are, they're refusing to take a strong stand against Bill 21, which is a bigoted bill. It targets religious minorities. The it would target everyone from wearing a cross to wearing a yarmulke to wearing a turban, and says you can't wear that if you want to be a public servant in Quebec. For some, it's easier to remove a religious symbol than others. And all they've said is, well, we oppose the bill, but we won't challenge it in court. Justin Trudeau actually tried to take on Jagmeet Singh in the English leaders debate, saying, I'm tougher on this bill than you are, because I said, maybe one day we might actually challenge this in court, but none of them will do it. That could cost them votes in Quebec. If I were Andrew Scheer and the Conservatives, I'd come out against this bill and pick up seats in Toronto and Vancouver, even if it means it's going to cost me some in Quebec.
Brian, the parties are still having difficulties in dealing with certain candidates. The Conservatives and Greens have let candidates go this week, but the Liberals refused to fire one who made some very controversial comments, especially on social media.
Yeah, so the Conservatives lost one in British Columbia who had made comments that were deemed homophobic. The Greens lost one that was deemed to be too pro-life, even though Elizabeth May used to be pro-life. But the candidate in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, Jamie Batiste, he's considered a star candidate for the Liberals. He's Micmac, he's a rising star. Until you look at his Twitter, he's endorsed communism in the past. He says it's time for socialism. He's worn the hammer and sickle shirt and posted it on social media. That's the least of it. That's what I can tell you. He's used words that we can't say in broadcast television, Hal, and on a regular basis. He said things like, every time I see a skinny Aboriginal girl, do I think she's on meth or pills? He compared watching men's tennis to gay pornography. Why is this guy still a candidate? Well, the simple answer is that the Liberals didn't fire the candidate from Papineau. You know him better as Justin Trudeau. They didn't fire him for wearing blackface. All of a sudden, the bar's a lot higher for what a Liberal candidate can get away with before they're fired.
So, Brian, let's have a look at the map of Canada right now. Out west here in the prairies, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, fairly strong for the Tories. BC is still kind of up in the air right now. It's kind of Tories and Liberal, even some strong NDP support. Central Canada, Ontario, Quebec, that seems to be where we see a lot of the swing ridings, correct?
It really is. Now, did a deep dive with a pollster named Nick Kouvalis of Campaign Research last week. It was the largest poll of the campaign, almost 5,000 respondents. And so when you look at it, you're right. BC is almost a three-way race, and the NDP will win in certain areas, and the rest will be Conservative and Liberal. But in Ontario, where I'm sitting, the middle of Toronto, is strongly Liberal blue. You get into the area just outside, and it starts to become a bit of a tie. But then Eastern Ontario, strong blue. Hamilton, Niagara, it's a tie. There are areas where the Conservatives are going to sweep, and other areas where it's going to be a battleground. And the same in Quebec. It's going to be Montreal will go Liberal, Quebec City will go Conservative, and the Bloc could take the rest of the province. So it's going to be a nail biter, and we'll see if anyone is able to break out. There were a lot of Liberals popping champagne corks a bit early this past weekend saying, oh, look, the Nanos daily tracking poll has us ahead by 3 points. Well, 2 days later, it's a tie in that poll again. So the numbers aren't moving beyond the margin of error, and nobody can celebrate just yet.
Should be a fun night, and BCN will be broadcasting live beginning at 7 o'clock, and you'll be joining us on election night on October 21st. One of our regular political contributors, Brian Lilley, joining me via Skype from Toronto. Thanks so much, Brian.
Thank you.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.